What's good, everybody? You guys ready? All right. I'm going kind of low key today because I'm tired. I'm very tired. I went to bed last night after I had that debate. I went to bed at around probably 11 o'clock, midnight. Woke up at 1:30 in the morning and couldn't get fully back to sleep until like much later. And even then, not really. So I spent most of the night like in that in-between stage. You know what I'm talking about? Like the in-between stage between being awake and being asleep. It sucked. But I'm doing this anyway. I'm here. Let me know you're live in the chat. What's up, Endgame? Good to see you. We've got a few interesting things to talk about today. Now, if you didn't see the debate last night, check it out. It was very interesting. I debated a Groyper type that essentially thinks that the Republican Party shouldn't reach out to black voters. Same usual Sesame Street arguments, but it was still very interesting. And I'll be having another debate on that channel on Politically Provoked again next week. And this one will be about black culture, welfare, debating those stereotypes that some conservatives like to peddle about the black community. So I'll be reminding you about that. But also, I am going to be on the Tammy Mack Late Show tomorrow night. That's on Fox Soul. And I'll be tweeting out about that as well. It'll be at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard. So hopefully that's not too late for some of y'all. But yeah, it'll be fun. I haven't been on Fox Soul in a while, I think since January. So I always have a lot of fun when I'm on there. But we've got a few things to talk about tonight. And before I get started, as usual, if you want to support my work, join my locals.com community at afreshperspective.locals.com. It's only if you want to subscribe, you'll get members only content that other people don't get. It's only $4.99 per month, so less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks. Also, if you want to do a one-time donation, there are the links right there. I really appreciate it. If you're benefiting from my work, if you like what you're hearing, and if you're learning, if you're being challenged, or if you just think I'm cool, then hit me up. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the help I can get. Now that being a full-time content creator, everything helps. So, oh yeah, you guys are active in the chat already. All right, yeah, put on the Malcolm frames today. Yeah, I didn't feel like doing the contacts, but they will be back because I get tired of glasses. Yeah, I think it was a good debate. It was very interesting. I think he brought up some arguments that he didn't really put much thought into, like when he was claiming that black people are radicalized because a poll showed that 90% of black people supported Black Lives Matter, as if that somehow means that 90% of black people are Marxists and are okay with the riots. That was a very questionable argument. I don't think he thought that one through too much, especially since when I came at him with polls, he was just saying, "Oh, you can make polls say anything," and then right at that he quotes a poll that black people support Black Lives Matter. So, but I mean, I expected it. I mean, they're not really used to debating people from the right on this stuff. So. And also, I mean, the Groyper crowd isn't very smart on these issues. But his main argument is that, oh, well, black votes won't matter, which isn't true. I mean, in the future, they matter. It matters now. I mean, if you peel off enough black votes from the Democrats, they don't win another presidential election. So his facts were wrong. It was one of those situations, though, where afterward I was like, oh, I should have said this. I should have said that. I'm still trying to get used to this whole debating thing. But it was cool. It was a good experience. And, I'll be having more of these debates as well. So it's good stuff. Let's see. Okay, you guys got some stuff to say about that debate. The Alchemist. Sub Jeff, the debate was very terrible. Your opponent kept using straw man arguments, claims to be a political junkie, but does not understand the political dynamics of Americans. I think he understands how he wants it to be, but not how it actually is. I think he wants it to be a situation where black votes aren't all that significant. And this is just my opinion. Obviously, I can't prove this, but I hear this a lot from his type. And they really want it to be to where black people's votes don't matter. It's the Goldwater mentality, right? He didn't want to go after black votes, so he pretended like it didn't matter and that they would never vote for Republicans. Although he basically ensured that would happen. But yeah, he used a lot of straw man. It was very entertaining when he tried to pretend that my argument about defunding the police was exactly like what Ibram X. Kendi would say. And I think I figured out why he was so butthurt by that argument, because he was really offended by that I said that the idea that the Democrats want to defund the police is a white supremacist proposition. Now, my explanation for that is because the higher crime rates would get worse if the police weren't around. More black people would get killed. It would drive out even more business. It would affect education. It would have an overall detrimental effect on the black community that is disproportionate to what white communities would deal with. And he went to all kinds of extremes to defend the Democrats. Like he's tried to tell me with a straight face that the Democrats care about black people, and tried to make it sound like I was generalizing when I say Democrats don't. Here's something that you guys should know. Whenever somebody assumes that when you say Democrats or conservatives or Republicans, and they assume that you're talking about every single one, they're coming at you in bad faith because they know you're not talking about every single person. And that's what he did. And he had a lot of straw man arguments. He was trying to make it sound like I think that any policy that disproportionately affects black people is racist or white supremacist. No, I was talking specifically about defunding the police. And yeah, there are others, but he wanted me to be saying things that I wasn't saying. He tried to pretend like I was making the Democrats are the real racist arguments. You guys have heard me make fun of that all the time. So yeah, he had to essentially lie to make his point, especially since that didn't really even have anything to do with what we were debating about. But there were a few decent points that he was making, but they weren't good enough to prove his point. So I think it was good. Again, it was one of those situations where I'm like, man, I wish I would have said this. I wish I would have said that. But as I get more used to this stuff, I'll be able to think of those things on the spot. So I should have fewer of those moments. Let's see. He thinks that minorities don't value big freedom and want big government in your life. Yeah, that's a common myth. I mean, and it's funny though, because he was contradicting himself, because he acknowledged that most black people are conservative or moderate. So how can you not want big freedom, but then you're more of a moderate or conservative? He doesn't understand why black people don't vote Republican. I mean, he doesn't understand the mistakes that the Republican Party made to drive away people who actually agree with them on a lot of issues. But a lot of them don't. And I wasn't really trying to educate him, because he is a Groyper type. So they have an agenda. They have more of a white nationalist bent. I don't think that they're all white nationalists, but they do kind of lean that way. They're not very fond of minorities in general, and they're even more hateful when it comes to members of the LGBT community. So essentially, they want to go back to the days of Reagan and have the party stay as white as possible. Let's see. Wait, no, not that one. We all debate well in retrospect. Yeah, that's true. That is true. The dude was extremely condescending. Yeah, he was. But again, that's the Groyper type. And the fact that I think he had prepared in a way that wasn't really going to make his point. I can tell you that he did some research, but he only did research that backed up what he said. And some of the stuff that he even said in his research, I don't really believe is true. And even the research that he did, like, for instance, when he talked about Donald Trump winning the younger white vote. So my argument was embracing more minorities will get you more younger white voters. So he said, well, Trump won the younger white vote. He didn't win it by that much, though. I mean, it was an okay lead, but I mean, a Republican president is generally going to do better with white people. But you can get more because there are a lot of white people who are turned off by the fact that the Republican Party is the party of old white men, whether it deserves that label or not. And I think some of it is deserved. That is how people see it. So they don't want to be part of it. Let's see. Anything else? Yeah, the truth is many Groyper types are afraid of losing power, especially with the browning of America. I think that's a lot of it. And what's very interesting about the Groyper types and even the alt-right, if you look at their policy positions and take out the socialist issues, a lot of them line up with Democrats. And this guy actually lines up with Democrats on healthcare and other issues. He's not like a conservative. He's okay with bigger government, and he was arguing for bigger government. So very interesting. And no, I'm not saying that anybody who embraces those policies are racist or Groyper types or what have you. Miki, of course you did. I wanted Jeff to curse him out. Yeah, I don't do that. You know me. I don't do that. I don't need to lose my temper. At the very most, I'll show annoyance because some of that shit he was saying was just dumb as hell. I mean, like I said, there was some points that he made that were okay, but when he started getting into the Ibram X. Kendi stuff, I'm like, you're just making this shit up as you go. You watch 2 videos and think that you know exactly where I come from on all these issues. It's reminiscent of what a lot of conservatives will do. If I disagree with them, they'll say, "Oh, well, you're a liberal." That's he was kind of doing that, but he was more smart. He was smarter about it. He was more smooth with it. But that was his intention, to make me seem like I'm more of a leftist. I'm more conservative than he is based on the policies that he supports. So I don't think that worked out too well for him. I know there are a lot of Groyper types in the audience, so they already agreed with them. So I'm not really concerned about what they think. But for others who are, less on the fringe, who might watch something like that, they might learn something a little more. All right. Now I'm going to get into stuff. Wait, let me get my thing up here. So the first thing that I want to talk about, this was a very interesting story. I saw it this morning, and I actually wrote up an article on it. It'll probably post tomorrow on libertynation.com. And I'll probably do a piece on it for Red State as well, because I think people need to know about this. But it involves a program that the Defense Department is looking to put into place. And it doesn't sound like they're considering it. It sounds like they're going to do it, but they haven't started it yet. So, and I forgot to put the links in the show notes. I'll do that after. But this is an article from The Intercept, who spoke with an anonymous source in the Defense Department talking about this program. And you know that since Biden got into office, he appointed General Lloyd Austin. And we're starting to see a little bit of wokeness, or maybe not a little bit, but a lot of wokeness come into the military. I don't think that's all Austin. I want to say that people were trying to do this even before, but now that there's a Democratic administration, they can pursue this agenda more aggressively. And one of the priorities is rooting out signs of domestic extremism or extremist ideology like white nationalism or white supremacy, or any hint that a member of the armed services might be sympathetic to or even involved in white supremacist groups that might carry out domestic terrorist attacks, or even just serve to radicalize more people. And as far as that goes, I don't really have much of a problem with that, but the way they're planning to go about it, it's a little bit scary. So I'm going to be reading from The Intercept, and I'm not going to read the whole article, but I just wanted to let you guys know what's going on, because I also want to talk about where this could possibly go if the government decides to abuse this program, which, I mean, we can't say they wouldn't, right? So as part of this is quoting from the article, quote, as part of the Biden administration's crackdown on domestic extremism, the Pentagon plans to launch a pilot program for screening social media content for extremist material, according to internal Defense Department documents reviewed by The Intercept, as well as a source with direct knowledge of the program. Quote, an extremism steering committee led by Bishop Garrison, a senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense, is currently designing the social media screening pilot program, which will continuously monitor military personnel for concerning behaviors, according to a Pentagon briefing in late March. Although in the past, the military has balked at surveilling service members for extremist political views due to First Amendment protections, the pilot program will rely on a private surveillance firm, in order to circumvent First Amendment restrictions on government monitoring, according to a senior Pentagon official. Now, they haven't yet selected the company that they're going to use, but according to the article, the front runner is a company called Babel Street. And they sell surveillance tools and they sell social media monitoring software. Now, the article talks about this company. It says, quote, Babel Street has drawn criticism for its practice of buying bulk cellular location data and selling it to federal national security agencies like the Secret Service, who rely on the private company to bypass warrant requirements normally imposed on government bodies seeking to collect data. In November, Vice reported that the U.S. military's Special Operations Command used one of Babel Street's products, which is called Locate X, to track the location of individuals for special forces operations. One method Babel controversially used was to purchase location data associated with the users of a popular Muslim prayer app. So what's going on here, and this is something that the NSA has done. And I know when it comes to service members, the First Amendment works a little bit differently. I'd like to dive more into that. I was having a conversation with Ross Schumann on it because he was in the military. And I know that a lot of the First Amendment protections don't apply to service members. But based on an article that I wrote previously about a Space Force commander who was fired from his job for speaking out against wokeism, I think might be some gray area there. Because here's the thing, if it wasn't, they wouldn't be using a private company to collect this data. The thing is, our government is not supposed to just be spying on us like this. They're not supposed to just be spying on private citizens unless they have a warrant for it or if they have some type of legal backing, because it violates the Constitution. So the way that the NSA has gotten around that is by having private companies like Babel do it for them. So the private company can do this. They can do surveillance on social media and then sell the information to the government. Thereby, the government isn't technically doing the spying, right? So the fact that they're doing it with this initiative shows that they see that there could be some legal trouble that they can get into for this. Otherwise, they wouldn't need to. They can just do the spying directly. I mean, or they could just buy the software and do it themselves. They wouldn't need to hire somebody on the outside. So the article continues. Quote, it is unclear to what extent Congress is aware of the program, if at all. When asked about the program, a spokesperson for Representative Don Bacon, a member of the House Armed Services Committee, said they were not aware of it. Now, after the article was published, the armed forces had done some more digging, and so they gave The Intercept a statement. The statement says, and I'm not going to read all of it, but it says, quote, the committee understands that the Department of Defense is exploring a means of implementing social media screening in conjunction with background investigations. We anticipate that any social media screening would be intended only as an additional means of vetting cleared individuals or those seeking to obtain a security clearance, not as a tool for ongoing surveillance of all men and women in uniform. So that's them trying to say, well, okay, we looked into it and it looks like they might not be using it on an ongoing basis. They're just going to use it to vet people who are looking for a security clearance. Okay, I understand that. But the statement continues, quote, that said, Secretary Austin has been clear about his intentions to understand to what extent extremism exists in the force and its effect on good order and discipline. We look forward to hearing the results of the stand down and the department's plan to move forward. So this is what they think is going to happen. But I mean, obviously that's kind of a squishy statement, right? They can't say for sure that that's what's going to happen. That's why they added that last line, which again, I understand. I wouldn't want them saying things that they didn't know for sure. So this is how they think that the military is going to use this. Now, They had kind of previewed this program back in April, and they did it in a press release that was basically introducing its countering extreme. The group is called Countering Extremism Working Group. And this group is designed to, again, weed out extremist ideology or soldiers who may be involved with some of these groups. And they said that they were going to make recommendations on, quote, incorporating machine learning and natural language processing into social media screening platforms. And this is designed to ensure training addresses issues raised by commanders and supervisors on gray areas, such as reading, following, and liking extremist material and content in social media forums and platforms. Now, the program is essentially going to use keywords to identify potential extremists. But the issue is that they have to come up with a list of terms to look for. And according to a senior Pentagon official, it's going to be hard to do that without, quote, running afoul of speech protections. They said that that has proven to be quite challenging. This was back in April when they were announcing it. Now, well, actually, before I get on to, some of the experts that they spoke with, again, this is scary. Like, I get that the Armed Services Committee is trying to, assuage people's fears, but we can see where this could possibly go, right? I mean, if they have a program that is going to surveil social media, which social media is a public platform, but where's the line here? Where's the line that the military has to keep from crossing? Because if what I'm thinking is true, and they're hiring a private company to get around any potential issues with the Constitution, then if it works, which it has in the past with the NSA, and with the NSA, it was as far as collecting data. So the company would get phone records, or like I was talking about before with the app, they bought that data, then gave it to the government, and then they used it. And of course, they're always going to say they're doing this stuff to keep us safe. But how much farther can they take this in a way that could harm normal citizens or violate our rights? I mean, they're talking about using keywords to identify extremist material. What's extremist material? How do they define that? At first, they might define it in a way that we all agree with, right? That might be the case. But we know what the woke crowd wants. We know what the hard left wants. They want to be able to shut down opinions that they just disagree with, even if they're not extremists, which is why they tend to label certain speech as far right or far right extremists. To them, everybody's on the far right because that makes them sound like we're more on the fringe. So that's where it kind of gets scary to me. And I don't trust the government to keep this just at legitimate white supremacists or Islamic terrorists or whatever other types of extremist ideology is out there. I think that they'll make the case to expand it, and a lot of people on the hard left will go along with it. But here are some of the other issues with it. So Mike German, a guy named Mike German, he's a retired FBI agent who did undercover work in neo-Nazi groups. Now he's a fellow at the Brennan Center for Justice's Liberty and National Security program. He says, quote, using keywords to monitor social media isn't just an unnecessary privacy invasion. It is a flawed strategy that will ensure it is short-lived. And then he continued, quote, it will undoubtedly produce a flood of false positives that will waste security resources and undermine morale without identifying the real problem, which is the tolerance for those that openly engage in racist behavior and discrimination. So he's not the only one that had some criticism for this. In 2019, the Department of Homeland Security had proposed to the White House, this would be under Trump, that DHS should collect social media data from immigration applicants. But the White House said no. So a guy named Harsha Panduranga, hopefully I didn't butcher that name, he's part of the Brennan Center's Liberty and National Security program. And he argued that the media screening would not only be ineffectual, but it could run afoul of free speech. So he said the White House Office of Immigration and Regulatory Affairs He said, quote, their decision signals there is little evidence that social media screening is an effective screening tool. He continues, quote, but we do know that facilitating a dragnet surveillance of the modern public square harms free speech and privacy, imposing a disparate impact on people who have traditionally borne the brunt of government profiling in the name of national security. So again, and I'm just going to go ahead and read the quote back to Mike German, the former FBI agent. He says, quote, trying to suss out extremists with an algorithm isn't likely to identify problem employees within the department nearly as effectively as simply making clear that racist misbehavior and discrimination won't be tolerated, requiring the troops and officers to report this misconduct when they see it, and then protecting them from reprisal when they do. He continues, quote, but today, because the Defense Department doesn't adequately protect whistleblowers, reporting such misconduct is often more risky to a person's military career than actually engaging in racist misbehavior. So the bottom line is, not only could this result in a violation of people's rights, and not only could it lead to something even worse where they're expanding this to regular civilians and finding ways to justify it, it's not even really going to be effective. And I like German's solution. Make it easier for people to be a part of the process. And if the military wants to weed out discriminatory behavior or extremists, because honestly, I don't want an extremist to be trained by our military. I mean, I want to say, well, let me see. Let me look it up. Wasn't Timothy McVeigh part of the military? Let's see. McVeigh military. Come on. Oh, come on. Don't go so slow. Maybe he wasn't. But still, I mean, there are other extremists who were part of the military or part of militias. So I can understand wanting to make sure that the military isn't training people like this on how to kill. However, you got to do it in a way that still protects our rights, right? So this will be something I want to keep my eye on, because I want to learn more about this. I want to learn more about whether or not the Constitution allows the military to do this. Now, Ross told me that they've been doing stuff like this in the past. But again, the fact that they're hiring a private company to do it, that's what's bothering me. Because I know that service members, again, the First Amendment applies differently to them. They don't have the same First Amendment rights that we do. They give some of that up. But if it's constitutional for the military to do this on their own, then why are they hiring a private company? That's what's suspicious to me. What do you guys think? All right. Why are you guys talking about Israel? Oh, you guys are still talking about the Groypers. Oh, man. All right. Let's see what you got to say. Please cover the Matt Gaetz issue. Amazing Lucas and Tucker Carlson are the only people on the right to cover it. I will be covering it. I've written about the Matt Gaetz issue earlier on, and I plan on revisiting it because I know that there have been some new developments. Yeah, I may even be talking about it on my audio-only podcast this week. We'll see, but I will be going back to that subject. What else we got here? What does Israel have to do with it? Why are so many conservatives so blindingly in love and obsessed with Israel? I don't know, but I don't want to talk about Israel right now. But that's another subject that I will be talking about. I've been catching up on that. And, I used to be really, 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 really into foreign policy, especially when it concerned the Arab-Israeli conflict. So I need to brush back up on that. I used to know about it in and out, but it's been years since I've delved back into that world. So it is still a subject that fascinates me, though. So you will be hearing from me on it. Let's see. What will be the benchmark for extremism? Is following Jeff Charles an extremist position? Maybe it is. Let's see. Hiring a third party to execute the program is a dead giveaway. Yes, that's what I'm saying. And I'm going to talk to Ross more about this tomorrow, because we were talking over text messages and I wasn't able to really explain what I was trying to say. But that's suspicious. That is suspect to me. Why are they using a private company if they can just do this normally? Let's see. You guys are still talking about Israel. Charles Jr., it's something about some American Christians being obsessed with the end of days and Israel's role in it. Yeah, that's part of it. Gilgamesh's work at. I mean, as a Christian, I know there's different reasons why some Christians support Israel. Some want to bring about the end times, like you said. Others are just following what it says in the Bible. It says, if you bless Israel, you'll be blessed. If you curse Israel, you'll be cursed. That's another reason. So those are people who aren't necessarily trying to bring about the apocalypse, but they're just wanting to bless Israel. But I think it's even deeper than that. Very interesting subject. All right, next. I want to talk about the rioting. I'm not going to stay on this subject for very long. If you saw what I've been saying on Twitter, you know how I feel about it, but just kind of frustrating that influencers and activist media outlets on both sides, have a certain opinion on riots, but the problem is that they tend to base their opinions on political affiliation. I'm not talking about everybody, and I'm also not talking about the rank and file. I think most people can condemn the riots at the Capitol on January 6th, and they can condemn the riots from last summer. But I came across an article on Newsbusters, and it talked about how CNN is really hamming up the riots now lately, probably because they're having that vote on whether or not to establish a commission to further explore the January 6th riots. You know what? Maybe I'll just talk more about that because that's really stupid. But anyway, it says CNN is putting major emphasis in recent days on new videos of the dreadful January 6th riot at the Capitol, expressing outrage and heavy rotation over Republicans who would try to dismiss what happened at the Capitol as resembling a routine day of tourism. You can't even say the people were mostly peaceful. That's what the article says. Now, they're right. Whoever wrote this article for Newsbusters is right. And the left, including CNN, including the Democrats, they've been trying to keep this in the national consciousness for as long as they can. They're exploiting it. I am fully convinced that is the only reason why National Guard troops are still there, even though there's no threats to the Capitol or any of our lawmakers. They want to keep that in our minds because they want to keep using it to smear conservatives. They won't bother to say that the vast majority of MAGA people and Trump supporters, that the vast majority of the people who were there did not participate in the riots. Again, this is based on politics. These people don't care about rioting. They like rioting when it's their people doing it. And even in the debate that I had last night, I talked about how there were a lot of Black people speaking out against the rioting, but the media wouldn't give them national coverage. His reply to that was, well, Don Lemon said that, rioting was affecting could be affecting the election results, so people needed to stop. Okay, you got that one example. And it was based on politics. It wasn't Black people in the community. He wasn't covering them. They weren't interviewing Black people on the street saying, we need to stop this. It was very few and far in between. So no, they weren't. They were essentially supporting the rioting and covering up for it and defending it. Unfortunately, on the right, we're doing the same thing because there were some Republican lawmakers, especially in the House, who were trying to downplay the riots. And one of them, I can't remember his name. I think I wrote it down somewhere. But he tried to make it sound like this was akin to people going on a tour. He said, if you saw some of the footage, and just to quote him right, he said that if you saw some of the footage and not some of the others, you might think that these are just people on a tour. Okay, but the problem is that the other footage still exists, though. So I get that in some of those cases, there were police officers, Capitol police officers, who invited some of these people in or let them in. That wasn't the whole story, though. A lot of these people forced their way in. They pushed over the barriers. They fought with police. They broke windows. They looted the Capitol. So we can't downplay what happened there. It doesn't make any sense. So what I'm seeing now are people on the right saying, well, why are the rioters at the Capitol getting a different treatment from those who rioted during the George Floyd riots? And honestly, that kind of remains to be seen. I'm not convinced that they're going to get separate treatment. First off, we can't really compare the two because the people who were arrested last year were arrested by local authorities. These people at the Capitol, this is the FBI we're talking about. They're getting federal charges. So that kind of turns it into a whole new ballgame. Now, somebody told me that some of the rioters who were basically guilty of nothing more than trespassing have had their bail denied. I looked that up, and so far, I mean, I've seen that happen to maybe a few people, but not a lot. I'm seeing that people were actually being given bail. Now, if they are doing this, if this claim is correct, then that's unfair. I mean, if you're doing something that is basically a misdemeanor or not that big of a deal, if you weren't involved in violence, you should at least be able to get some bail for that. But again, the way the federal government, the way federal law enforcement handles these things isn't always the same as how local law enforcement agencies handle it. Now, I did read from The Guardian that a lot of the people that were arrested, a lot of their charges were dropped. Now, this happened in Dallas and in Philadelphia, although there are still a lot of people being convicted. But here's the thing. I'm going to see if I can find the reason again. Because some of the citations weren't even filed after they got arrested. Now, it says in the article from The Guardian, quote, officials did not file charges for nearly all low-level offenses, like disobeying curfews, while most often pursued cases with strong evidence of more serious crimes like assault or looting. So I think it was about 17,000 people who were arrested total last year for rioting. A lot of them were let off because the authorities didn't have enough evidence, or they were guilty of low-level offenses. Like if you're just staying out past curfew, they don't need to revoke your bail for that. They don't need to keep you in bail for that, right? They were focusing on more serious crimes. Now, if somebody can find me evidence that most or half or at least a big chunk of these people who are being accused of assault or vandalism or looting, if you can find evidence that these people are getting off, then we might have something there, and I'll talk about that. But right now, I'm not seeing the difference that people on the right are claiming. I think Matt Walsh came out and was like, why isn't Trump defending the people who are being hunted down by the FBI? He's calling it a witch hunt because the FBI is hunting down people who committed a crime. Now, what would Mr. Walsh be saying if the shoe were on the other foot? If people were being hunted down for rioting and they were being arrested, would he be saying that they should be defended? No, of course not. And again, Trump told them to protest peacefully. So if I were Trump, I'd be like, no, I'm not going to defend you. I told you, dumbasses, to protest peacefully. So here's the thing, but it's based on politics. Matt Walsh doesn't care about rioting. He's okay when it's MAGA that does it. On the left, CNN doesn't care about rioting. They're okay with it when it's Black Lives Matter or Antifa or whomever doing it. And honestly, it's getting on my damn nerves. You guys know I get aggravated with this stuff, but I had to get it out. But here's the thing. I want to talk mainly about that commission, and I think the House just passed it. They want to do a 9/11 style commission to further investigate the riots at the U.S. Capitol. Now, there are already congressional investigations going on about what happened on January 6th. The FBI is still investigating the matter. There is absolutely no need for yet another investigation. Now, this thing is probably going to get shot down in the Senate. I mean, even Mitt Romney and Susan Collins said that they had problems with it. Mitch McConnell has already signaled that he's not going to support it, and he's going to urge Republicans not to support it. So I think this thing is going to be dead on arrival once it gets to the Senate. But why are they doing this? We already know why. Again, it's the exact same reason why they pushed for having the National Guard guarding the Capitol, even after it became necessary. They want to continue to use this event to propagandize. They want to use it to smear conservatives, because they're continually trying to make it sound like most conservatives are okay with riots when that's not the case. That's all this is. That is 100%. That's all this is. These people don't want another investigation. They don't care about another investigation. They already know that the FBI is going to turn up the information that they need. Also, there are other congressional investigations. So the only reason they're doing this is because they want to keep this issue on the political stage so that they can exploit it. That's all. And honestly, if you think that If you think that this is like an honest, good faith effort to get to the bottom of this, I've got some prime beachfront property in, I don't know, Montana to sell you. All right. What do you guys think? Am I off base? Are these people acting in good faith? Let's see. Wait, are y'all still talking about the Kuipers? Oh no, wait, I think I went back too far. No, you guys are still talking about Israel. All right, this tells me I need to do a video on Israel. That's cool. A commission about COVID? No, it's a commission about the riots at the Capitol. Conservatives used to love the FBI. Yeah, we did, didn't we? It goes to show you that's what happens when you blindly trust the government. America is burning, but January 6th is the most important thing to lawmakers, DC, and Capitol Hill is full of clowns. Yes, they are. As a matter of fact, I think that they should turn the dome on the Capitol building into like a big tent, like a circus tent, because that's what we got going on right now. This is what they want to spend taxpayer money on, by the way, guys. If they pass this, if somehow this gets past the Senate, we will be spending taxpayer money to I don't know, triple up an investigation, quadruple an investigation. It makes no sense. But I think part of this too is because Trump is out of office and he doesn't have social media, so they can't use him as a deflection as much. So I think this is part of the problem as well for them. Let's see. A congressional investigation won't yield much political fruit when inflation hits double digits. Yeah, this could be an attempt at distraction too, David Gray. But yeah, you're right. I mean, if inflation gets worse, there are like 5 different crises going on in this country right now, and they want to focus on launching yet another investigation into January 6th. I should have brought that up in my article. That was a good point. Oh, well, that's all right. I'm tired. I'll use that. I'll blame that on my fatigue. They're just controlling the narrative. Yeah, that's exactly what this is. And it'll be interesting to see what they say when it fails, because I think they'll probably try again and try to make some changes that might be more amenable to Senate Republicans. I still don't see Senate Republicans going for this. I don't think so, because it's completely unnecessary. All right. So let me go on to the next topic here. Now, I want to talk about an article that was written for Liberty Nation, and you guys need to read this article because I'm going to quote from it, but I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Very interesting. It was written by Tim Donner. Him and Lisa Donner are the founders of Liberty Nation. Awesome people, and he wrote this incredible article on something that I've been kind of thinking about, but haven't really been talking as much about. Now, I've been talking about the conflict between the Trump wing of the Republican Party and the establishment. I mean, especially with the whole brouhaha over Representative Liz Cheney and, the civil war that we're in right now. He wrote a very good article asking if there might be a way that the two factions could find a level of commonality or find some common ground. So I'm going to quote from this article. He writes, quote, Trump loyalists believe the vote by Representative Liz Cheney to impeach the 45th president is unforgivable and have vowed to vigorously oppose all who support her. Cheney's establishment cohorts are dead set on never seeing the whites of Donald Trump's eyes again in the Oval Office. I think that those two sentences sum up what's going on here. You've got people who are in the non-establishment camp, and they can't stand anybody in the establishment camp, or at least not people like Liz Cheney. And then vice versa. You've got people like Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, Mitt Romney, who hate Donald Trump's guts and they want him out of the party. They can't stop talking about him. And I don't think the only area where I might inject a little more nuance in that is that I don't think that everybody who loves Trump and is part of the non-establishment has that level of vitriol for everybody who doesn't like Trump or criticizes Trump. Like, you see efforts to get Liz Cheney out of office. Same with Adam Kinzinger. But like I brought it before, you don't see that so much with Ben Sass. Maybe because he's just not as loud with it. He'll talk about Trump, but I haven't seen that Ben Sass obsesses over Trump. Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger are obsessed with Trump. They spent the whole Sunday morning media circuit talking about it. Them, also Larry Hogan. These people are fixated. But let's continue with the article. He writes, quote, "Caught in the middle of this fight are rank and file Republicans, the voters who will ultimately determine the direction of the party or watch it divide and decay even further to the point of no return. Right now, conservatives are dazed, dispirited, and confused, caught between the undeniable historic accomplishments of Donald Trump and the unavoidable reality of January 6th, or more precisely, how that date has been interpreted by the citizenry." And I think that's correct also. Because, like I said, I think that there are people who don't really like Trump, but they might be willing to work with him or work with his supporters. And I think it's vice versa. But they're being caught between the people who are, I won't say more on the extremes, I guess, but just the people who are more dug in, that the people who have dug their heels in and said, no, we don't like the establishment. We need to take over. We need them gone. And the establishment saying, no, we need to go back to the pre-Trump days because Trump messed everything up and Orange Man bad, yada, 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 yada. And by the way, I do think that both sides make some decent points. You know where I side with. I side with more with the non-establishment crowd, but that doesn't mean that I don't take the points that a lot of the establishment people say. And I'll get to that in a second, because I think there are some concerns that they bring up that are valid. So the article continues, quote, "How can there be reconciliation between those who believe Trump was one of the greatest presidents in our lifetime and those who believe him to be not just a bad person, but a danger to the republic? Make no mistake, the passion of Trump supporters is equaled or surpassed by the vocal minority intent on purging him from the party." And Tim is further bringing out this tension here. And I think he's doing it excellently. I think he is describing this situation perfectly. I don't think I've seen anybody else describe it better than what he's laying out here. And when you read the article, he'll kind of go throughout the history and talk about other times in the party's history and in the Democratic Party's history where similar things have happened. But But he does say, quote, "In sharp contrast, the uphill climb faced by establishment forces is far steeper for the most basic of reasons. They are unpopular, perhaps wildly unpopular, among the party's base voters. In 2016, the establishment threw every one of their best and brightest up against Donald Trump, and they were all wiped out. Trump promised big, governed big, and maintained strong support from GOP voters throughout his term. That is also 100% true. There is this fight going on, but the establishment is going to have a harder time because they are unpopular. The reason why they're unpopular is what I've said many times before. They were in power for decades. Members of the establishment made all of these promises. Most of them are conservatives, and they made all these promises. We're going to push for this. We're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. We're going to fix the issues at the border. This is before Trump. They promised to fix immigration. They promised some of them even promised to crack down on business owners who knowingly hire illegal immigrants. Those are just two of the issues that I'm talking about here. They got elected, they got into Congress, and they didn't do jack. Now, I will say some of them tried, especially the ones that came up in the Tea Party movement. They tried, like Ted Cruz. They were trying to get stuff done. But you need a majority to be able to get that done. And then when I say majority, I'm talking about the majority of Republicans in the majority of the Republican movement in Congress and in the Senate. So that's why they're unpopular. When Trump came on the scene, he wiped them out. People were ready for something different. And that's why we are here where we are now. Now Trump is out of office, and we're trying to figure out which way we need to go. And the base does not want to go back to the days before Trump. That is non-negotiable for them. And that's what I'm saying. I'm also seeing on the establishment, I am seeing more of a willingness, like let's say if you look at Kevin McCarthy, I am seeing more of a willingness to say, hey, you know what? Let's work together and see what we can come up with. I actually think that's a good approach. I know he gets a lot of flack from both sides, but he's saying he doesn't want to eliminate Trump. He's not trying to kick the Trump movement out of the party. He knows better, but he's saying, where can we work together on this stuff? So the article continues, quote, with the ever diminishing likelihood of a kumbaya moment between Trumpists and Cheneyites, there remains but one strategy or hope for reconciliation, a common fear of the left. It is up to the party hierarchy to stoke sufficient and justified fright about the far left tilt of the current president and Congress to motivate voters to show up and stop the left, if not affirm the right. Of course, this lone strategy is far easier said than done, given the alliance of the party's never Trump wing with the left throughout, given the alliance of the party's never Trump wing with the left throughout the Trump era. So I agree with that. I mean, if they're going to be able to pull out a victory here in 2022 and 2024, one of the areas that they can unite on is the fear of the left. But you guys know me, it's going to take more than that. I think it's going to take more than that. I think that might even help in the short term, but it's also going to be a cohesive message. And the message has to be the left is bad, but it has to be the left is bad, and here's what we're going to do about it. Here's what we have to offer. I don't think that can happen unless enough people in the non-establishment camp and enough people in the establishment camp find other areas of common ground. Because I don't know, the left might mess up so badly that just saying we're not the left, that might work. But I don't think it'll work long term. I think Tim would agree with me on this, by the way. I mean, we've talked about this stuff before on the show. Over the long term, we're going to need a message to compete. But again, we've got 5 crises going on right now, and Biden is handling them all badly. So if they can just get to a point where they can say, you know what, we'll stop screaming at each other for a couple years and we'll just highlight what the left is doing, they might get out a short-term victory. But if they want it to continue, they have to learn how to sell the benefits of conservatism, which means that these issues between the two camps need to be resolved. Now, the final paragraph of the article, Tim writes, quote, the worm always turns, often slowly, but sometimes more rapidly and unexpectedly. This boiling conflict between those who love Trump and those who hate him will ultimately be settled by the party's most passionate supporters. And while history is replete with unknowable or unforeseen events, which will likely tip the scales, political odds makers are similarly unlikely to establish Liz Cheney and company as the favorites to prevail over a president who, for whatever his flaws, has been the most dominant figure in the Republican Party since Ronald Reagan. And I think that sums it up nicely. We're not going back to the days of Cheney. It's not going to happen. Now, here's my concern, because we're not going to go back to the pre-Trump days. No matter how hard the Cheneys and the Romneys and the Kinsingers fight, it ain't going to happen. And they may even know that. But Trump isn't going anywhere. His supporters aren't going anywhere. I don't think that Trump's going to run again in 2024. But if he doesn't, he's still going to be a kingmaker. He's still going to be a leader in the party. He's still going to be influential. People are saying right now, oh, do you think he's the leader of the party? Yeah, but in a few minutes, he's not going to be the only one. There's going to be more that come up. And the thing is we need to figure out what this is going to look like going forward. My concern is that we topple the establishment and replace it with something worse or just as bad. And I think that it's possible. Now, I'm saying this as somebody who's in the conservative movement. People on the left think that this move just means that the extreme fringe MAGA people are taking over because they don't really know anything. They don't know anything about what goes on the right. But I do. You and I do, if you're on the right. And you understand that it's not going to go full fringe MAGA either, because there's still enough people who don't want that to happen. I mean, a lot of people who supported Trump didn't really like his personality. It was more about the policy. So the problem that I can see happening is that the base gets more fixated on people who know how to say the right things, just like the establishment did. They know how to rile people up. They know how to be Trumpy, and they have absolutely no substance. They know absolutely nothing. They don't have people around them who do know something. They get into Congress and they use their position to grandstand and get clicks, and it's Grifton season. And you guys know what I'm talking about, because I talk about it all the time. And no, it's not just Marjorie Taylor Greene. There are others, and I think there will be more. And my fear is that the base won't be able to discern somebody with substance from somebody who knows how to use social media well, or knows how to pull stunts and get attention, or somebody who knows how to, or people who just know how to do great ads, or they were able to pay for a company to do great ads for them, but they're not really big on policy. If that happens, I could see a resurgence of the establishment coming back within 5 to 10 years, because we already have people in Congress who make a joke out of it. And I'm not saying that, to get it to Congress, you don't have to have a level of charisma. You have to be able to appeal to people. You got to be able to either make people laugh, make people mad, or make people whatever. I understand all of it. This is politics. I know. I understand politics. At the same time, we need people who are going to get in there and get as much shit done as possible. I don't expect them to fulfill every single promise that they make. But I think most people just need to see that they're in there fighting for something. I mean, if you got elected to Congress by having a reputation based on how you fight with the media, but then you get into Congress and you haven't introduced any significant type of legislation, or haven't introduced a proposal to remove bad legislation, and you haven't really done anything, then you were running for clout. And I don't want a bunch of clout chasers in Congress. I mean, if you're going to be a clout chaser, at least do something when you get to Congress. I'll take that. But I'm afraid that's not what's going to happen. I fear that we're going to replace the establishment with people who aren't going to do any better because they just want the attention. Or maybe they think they know stuff and they really don't. They just want to be celebrities. What do you guys think? What's the likelihood of that happening? Because I'm hoping it doesn't. I'm not saying that is exactly what's going to happen. I'm just saying it's very possible. Let's see what we got here. Hey, Jeff, do you have an opinion on the Mises Caucus in the Libertarian Party? I personally like it a lot. I don't know enough about it. I listen to Dave Smith all the time, so he talks about it, but I would like to know more before really weighing in. I do like what Dave Smith says their goals are, that they want the Libertarian Party to be taken seriously. They want to take it over from the people who have, done little to nothing with it. It kind of mirrors the battle that's going on in the Republican Party. So on that level, I mean, I can respect it, but I'd like to know a little bit more first. Gilgamesh's War Cat, it's populist versus old school authoritarian right. Yeah, it is. And I think even though we have the authoritarian right, I think that we've implemented or included a lot of libertarianism on the right in general. I fear going straight towards populism. I mean, populism should be used as a tactic. It shouldn't be used as an ideology, right? We need to have conservative principles. I don't mind using some of those tactics, but I don't want us to go full populist. That won't be a good thing either. Let's see. Wait, I saw a good comment up here. Where'd it go? Okay. I learned that Liz Cheney voted with Trump 94% of the time, higher than the representative from New York who will be replacing her. Yeah, I don't think Elise Stefanik is a good idea. Again, see, you got to replace them with people who are better. Now here's the thing. Liz Cheney is a conservative. I've never impugned her conservative credentials. However, she is part of that old school establishment that was do nothing, that was inept. That's why I wanted her gone. I didn't really care how she felt about Trump. Now, when you start getting to where you're obsessed with Trump and then you don't want to move forward because all you want to do is talk about Trump, well, yeah, you got to go. I mean, that's stupid. Why do you want to keep focusing on somebody who's not in office anymore in a way that turns you into an obstacle to progress. No, I want the conservative movement to move forward. We need to keep moving forward, focusing on relitigating what Trump said and what Trump didn't say and what Trump did and what Trump didn't do. It's not going to get us anywhere, which is exactly why the left wants us talking about it all the time, by the way. Let's see. Lindsey Graham is establishment to learn to lick Trump's boots after a while. That's just wrong. What else we got here? That's an interesting point, Brown Mamba. That proves that Trump wasn't anti-establishment the way he portrayed himself. When a neocon votes with you at that high of a rate, you are part of the establishment. That's not a bad point. Let's see. The establishment is at odds with the base and uses Trump as the excuse. You are absolutely right, Mrs. Pinky. The problem is that the establishment doesn't want to take responsibility for their mistakes. And I've been harping on that. They won't admit the reason why Trump rose up. They're blaming everybody but themselves. That's why they're hyper-focused on Trump. Because if they were to focus on the truth, they would recognize, this isn't as much about Trump as it is about the fact that these people just don't like us anymore. They're fed up with us. They don't believe that we performed. That's what happened. It wasn't Trump. It could have been somebody else who maybe was Trumpy, but not Trump. They messed up. They lost the base. The base didn't just reject them out of hand. They had their chance. They had more than their chance. And they didn't take advantage of it. Let's see. Go down here. Okay, we need a MAGA agenda. Whoever follows that path gets my vote. America first. I might be down with it depending on what you mean by MAGA agenda and America first, because that's starting to mean different things to different people. The Alchemist. Holly, Marjorie Taylor Greene, 2024. If that happens, I'm going to blame you, all right? And I'll be moving to Canada. Let's see. Trump Owens, you better stop playing. Again, if that happens, I will be moving to Canada. A pox on both your houses. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you guys for joining me again. I appreciate it. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell. I need to get some sleep. I'm so wiped out. But yeah, if you want to support my work, join my locals.com community at afreshperspective.locals.com for members-only content. Check out my podcast, A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles. You can get it on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave me a comment. Give me a 5-star review. That helps me with the algorithm, especially on Apple. And I appreciate each and every one of you. But until next time, keep your minds free.